Michael Yo's got his own show. Michael Yo's got his own show. If you're looking for a place to go, the only place to go is the Yo Show. The only place to go is the Yo Show.
Hey, what's up? It's Michael Yo. Welcome to the Yo Show. This is how we roll. So here's the thing. Got a new special dropping March 17th. Also, support the pod. You know, give it a subscribe, give it a like, give it a listen, give it stars. Give it whatever you want to give it, but keep it moving because at least on my Facebook page, this thing has taken off. Hey, Brian, our engineer, never paying attention. Brian, do you realize on my Facebook page, some of these clips are getting like 200,000-300,000 views now?
That's great.
He doesn't care.
We're getting
there was no
great.
emotion. That's great.
That's great. Brian's trying to figure shit out over there. That's why. Brian's like, look, until I get into the podcast.
I'm making sure nobody's clipping this week.
That's right. So I did 2 podcasts like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
We don't have to talk about it.
And Brian's the engineer. His job is to make sure the sound and video is good. Mm-hmm. Every podcast, clip it. It's like, you know, like, yeah. That's like, I love Brian. You know why I do? Even though he messed up that last time, he's been great. And
he brought us 2 waters.
I know, but I support people that support me at the beginning, Leo Flowers.
Right.
You know what I mean? You got to stick with the people that always had your back from the beginning because it's easy to jump on at the end.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard to jump on at the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
The best piece of advice I ever got.
From who?
From about the industry. Big casting director was talking Star Wars, Star Trek, all of J.J. Abrams films, basically. This woman said, nobody ever wants to be the first person, but they happily want to be the second, third, fourth, and fifth. So if you get that one person, that one opportunity, then everybody wants to jump on board.
That's why it's crazy that dudes will leave their first wife. You know, they call it like the starter wife. I heard that term a lot of times. Oh. They're like, oh yeah, you got a starter wife, and then you know the second wife is the hot. She's hotter, smarter. You know, she's wife 2.0 or whatever.
No, that's not true.
No, I'm talking about generally speaking.
You know why she's hotter than your first wife?
Why is she hotter?
Because you're going to go way younger. Because you both built, like if you're dating a woman and you married her at 26, now she's 36.
Right.
But
you're both 36.
You're both 36. Yeah. You know, so
now
you're going to go
36,
again
she's 21.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And here's the problem with all that.
What's the problem with all that? Yeah.
Is look, I'm a guy and I can say this. Guys, when they get older, they don't lose. I want to say this right because
they get more swag. They can get more women. They become
women still like men when they get older, but not vice versa.
Right.
You know, and I don't want.
But that's starting to change, though.
I know.
It's really. I mean, women in these yoga pants now, and you know, the kale juice, whatever. The little infrared saunas they going to.
Oh yeah.
Women in their 50s.
People, it's
looking.
I don't know if it's okay. That's enough. I don't know if it's.
This is for Disney Plus.
Yes, I don't know if it's us getting older, or is it people taking way better care of themselves. But like you're right, women do look great in their fit. Man, I went to a yoga class, and I'm not flexible at all. But my New Year's Eve resolution was to be more flexible. So I go to this yoga class. There's women 60, 70 years old, outdo me, like run circles around me, and I'm like. Man, these women take care of themselves.
Taking care, man, and you know, and they just got a wholeness way of life because it's not just working out. For most guys, we do the gym, we drink a protein shakes, we get out, and that's where women they got like community, they have friendships, they have resources, they have what they call lateral relationships. Right, where like most men have a hierarchical, like you know, boss, subordinate, higher ups. Women like they make friends. My girlfriend Michelle, awesome, her friends are everybody in her life, from the mailman to her trainer to her acupuncturist. Like those people in my life are just people that I pay and I see for that hour. Those people in her life, they hang out, they go to dinner, they support each other outside of just the work.
Well, she's not selfish like you are. That's why. Because I'm a very selfish person too.
Wow, Michael, I feel attacked right now.
No, you shouldn't, because I know you. Like we've known each other.
But in what way am I selfish?
Well, like I would say you're very much like me.
How so?
where you don't do all the supporting and everything. Like you don't go out of your way to support people like a mailman. Like if you saw the mailman every day and he dropped you off, dropped the mail in your hand and you had long conversations every day, maybe. But just a dude that you see every once in a while drop off the mail, you're not going to be like, oh, I'm going to go support you playing the drums at this club.
Yeah, because
where your girlfriend would.
I was raised where support was transactional, meaning I'll give you money. You know, I see a person on the street, I give them $10. My nieces and nephews, they got to go to basketball camp. Boom, boom, I'm Venmoing them money, right? It's all transactional, where for my girlfriend, it's more relational. It's about time spent.
Yes.
It's about hanging out. And I'm like, why we got to hang out? Here's the money or here's the gift. That's you good, right? You know?
See, your relationship is very much like mine. I would rather, I like hanging out, but I also know I don't like people, which is very hard for me. You know, like people are surprised that, because I can be, when I'm working, I can be around everybody and be fine. But when I'm not working, I don't want to be around people because my job is to be around people. And especially when I was doing red carpets and things like that, all these cameras and stuff around. It's like when I go home, I don't want to be around a lot of people.
You have to decompress.
And then now my wife is making friends. So now I got to be friends with other people and they're all nice.
Is that exhausting for you?
Dude, let me tell you something. Life is exhausting right now. I mean, 2 kids, 5 and 2, it's that prime age where you never stop. Like my friend told me once, if you have 1 kid, if you have 2 kids, you can have 10. And now I understand what he meant because you're never stopping. Because if one's sleeping, the other one's up running around. If the other one's sleeping, hardly ever they're both asleep at the same time.
And if they are asleep, you're worried about, you know, them. Are they okay asleep? Are they dead? Like,
I don't know.
Like
I don't know about that one because sometimes when they go to sleep, you just
crash.
You crash. Like it's so. I've never been, and I go to work at night too. So and I do podcasts. So I'm living my dream, and the whole family. I've always wanted a whole family like this, and it's a dream. But now I understand when parents say it wears heavy with you. You know what I mean? It's heavy. It's heavy because you're always moving and supporting and teaching, and it's a lot.
And you have some, and I mean, it's coming from somebody like it's not. I think you have support, right, from her grandparents and.
Oh yeah.
You know, I know you had like a sleep nurse in the beginning, right?
Sleep nurse at the beginning,
and it's still a lot, right? 2 kids
running around, always wanting something. Now they're starting to compete. Where if my son has something, so now we have to buy 2 of everything, and they have to look exactly the same. Or my daughter, who's 2, will go after my son and try to take his stuff. You know, so. Woo!
Let me ask you this.
Yes.
There's so much talk about, you hear about like men not really being emotional and shutting down. Mm-hmm. I find when I look at young boys, they're very emotional. And I'm like, at what point do they not, is that taken away from them?
My son is more emotional than my daughter already. And he's very emotional. But I also wonder in the pecking order, is it because I was talking to my friend the other day about this. Is it because he was first born and all the attention was on him? So whenever he needed something, it was given to him. And our baby girl, there's no way that you can give the same amount of attention that he got to her because you have 2. And you have to make it feel balanced. Like how I like to do it, if my daughter's in my lap, you know, and I'm holding her, and I'll look over at my son and go, buddy, I love you. Because you constantly got to show both of them you're not favoring one. You know, so there's no way she gets all the attention like he did because she wasn't around. So I wonder, is that why they're sensitive? And you have a psychology degree, right?
I have a master's in counseling psychology.
So could that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. You know, one of the things I do with Michelle, like I grew up in this world of I love you, but what I started saying more recently is I love us, because you know there's me, there's her, and then there's us. And I think a lot of times people forget about the relationship. The relationship is a third entity. So it's like there's you, your wife, there's a relationship between you and your wife. That's a third entity. And then there's you and the kids, and then there's a relationship that you have between. And it sounds like it's more convoluted, but when you start addressing things as an us and we, then you start to see that the competition will start to dissipate because they'll start thinking in terms of us and we. But when we keep things individual, like we live in this world where you can have it your way and you can customize things exactly to your needs. And so you start getting into this mode of I should have everything my way. And so when it's not your way, you get flustered, frustrated, upset, things like that. But when we start thinking of things collectively, where it's a us and a we, then it's not so much about me not getting my way. It's like, is the relationship still good? Are we still good? And if you can answer yes to that, then it helps to mitigate the intensity of those frustrations or pain and hurt. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I also think a person wants to know you love them. And I love you needs to be in that conversation as well. Because
I agree.
I love us is a great statement, but it's kind of like, to me, as soon as I hear it, it's more of an ego thing where I'm not going to say I love you, I love us because I'm involved in that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's more, to me, it's more ego driven where if I go, Leo, I love you, it has nothing to do with me. It's all about you. And that's why I like about that. But I understand around my kids, it might be better since they're competing.
Yes.
I love us. So then you're never saying I love you.
So great point.
Yeah.
So you can do I love us. And then when you say I love you, what you want to point to is the essence of them.
Yes.
So I'll say to Michelle, if I do say I love you, I won't just stop there. I'll say, I love how you love taking care of yourself. I love how you care so much for other people. So what that does is it reinforces, one, that you see their effort in what they're doing and who they are. And two, it allows them to proliferate that, right? Because a lot of times, what we all want are three things: to be seen, heard, understood. And so if we don't feel seen, heard, understood, we will find a way to get that, whether it is beneficial for us or harmful to us. Like a kid who acts out in class. He just wants to be seen because he's not getting attention at home. If you can give that to him in an appropriate way, then they'll stop acting out.
But you don't feel like some kids that do are just bad kids. I mean, I really believe
I've had, so, I used to substitute teach for LAUSD for a number of years. When you look at behavior that is disruptive to the classroom, 9 times out of 10, if what I would do with that kid is before the next class, when they would come in, I would pull them outside before any behavior even started and say, hey, man, just let me know if there's anything you need from me, because I understand that we have a lot of challenges we don't feel safe talking to people about, and I want to let you know I'm a resource here for you. So I'm not even talking about don't be bad, don't yell. I'm not telling them what not to do. I'm letting him know or her know or them know, right?
Yeah,
you have to cover all of it.
Multiple,
that if there's something that you need, I'm a person that you can talk to. And 9 times out of 10, Michael, I will see that behavior dissipate. You have to catch it beforehand. To try to address it in the moment, it's too late.
It's too late.
They're already off and running. It's the train has left the station. So, like if your son, acts up right in public or something like that, at that point you're just doing damage control. But you can't leave it at that. The next day or later on, or like at bedtime when things have calmed down, you say, you let them know, like, next time, here's what I need from you, right? And then before you go into that situation again, you go, "What do you remember what we talked about last time?" And have them say it to you. So the key thing is a lot of times when we're saying something to somebody, they're not really listening. So it's really important that when you talk to someone, that you have them repeat back to you what you just said, and that you say it to them 3 times.
Oh yeah,
3 times. It sounds like overkill, but the first time they're in their head.
Yep.
The second time they're like, "Oh, you talking to me?" And then the third time they're actually listening. So we have to say things 3 times.
So when I meet people, should I tell them my name 3 times and make them repeat it so they remember it?
On some level.
What's my name?
What's my name? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people say that. So like even in psychology, they'll say when you meet somebody, try to say their name at least 3 to 7 times so that you remember it. You know. And you can do that with so many other memory tricks. So a lot of times because you may have grown up in a household where your parents were like, don't make me say it again. And it's like, psychologically, you absolutely need to say it again.
Okay.
That's why commercials,
say the same thing.
Right, you don't see the commercial once, you see it 10 times. You know, you're looking at Super Bowl ads, you know?
Yeah. Speaking about Super Bowl, did your team win? Did you care about it?
So I'm from Chicago, huge Bears fan.
Oh yeah.
And but I was rooting for Joe Burrow. I just love the story. Joe Montana.
I love
Joe, it. I forget who the other Joe was, but
Joe Namath.
Joe Namath. So he would have been the 3rd Joe. And I just like Cincinnati, that grit. You know, they're from the Midwest.
It's blue collar.
And so I was all for it. But I, at the end of the day, I was just rooting for a good game. I was like, please God, don't let this be 50-3.
Yeah.
You know,
and it was a great game. It was a good game. So now you're at the Comedy Cellar.
Yeah.
So where are you at in comedy now? What are you working on? How do you feel about it? You know, like, because comedy, it's a grind, man. It's a grind.
You know, I'm excited about it because, you know, I started off in comedy being more socio-political, talking about guns and immigration and things that are happening in the world. And then when the pandemic hit and I was doing these Zoom comedy shows, it felt weird talking about these hot button issues in people's homes. I in real life would never do that. On stage, they're
coming to a show. Yeah, it's different.
But on Zoom, people on their couches, they're like petting their cat, and I'm like, guns, you know, like, whoa, like it just felt too aggressive. And so I was like, I got to be more personal. There's too much going on in my inner world right now between the Black Lives Matter movement that was taking place. And, but, you know, I have 3 sisters that I'm connecting with. And, you know, in the past year, Michael, I don't know if I told you, I was diagnosed with asthma. I thought I was having a heart attack on a hike, and it turned out to be an asthma attack. So I'm 40. I'll be 46 this year. So to be diagnosed with asthma at this point was like insane to me. And then sleep apnea, which is like when you stop breathing in your sleep. And so, you know, 2 major health issues that I've had to address. And I realize so many other people are going through that. And so why not talk about that on stage versus what's going on in Russia, Ukraine? Like who?
Yeah, and I always feel like, you know me, ever since I started, my comedy is very personal.
Yeah.
You know, where I was told when I first started, well, what happens if nobody likes you in your story? I go, well, then they're not going to like me because that's what I started with. And it's interesting to see. I also know there's way better political comedians than me. That's all they write, and that's all they do. They'll see a news story that day, they'll have a new joke. And I found out very quickly that's not my thing. You know, like Nelly came out with a video of a girl giving him a BJ, and I would love to be the comic where I could go on stage that night and have a joke for it. I'm not that guy. You know, it's just not me. You know what I mean? Where you have a Sam Morril, Mark Norman, different comics like that can have 100 jokes that are kind of late night writers, but I've come to a very good place in my stand-up where it's like, okay, that's not me. I'm not going to even attempt to be that because it doesn't even feel right to me. So if nothing happens in my real life, I just don't write.
Yeah, you know, and I'm just like, there's so much happening in my real life where I'm like, how can I not write about this? And, you know, my mom had COVID, and, you know, my girlfriend is Jewish and Russian, and that's been a whole experience of like learning about her culture and their ways, and meeting her mom and her dad for the first time. And
now, are her parents Jewish?
Her parents are Jewish.
So now this is a question I have, and I ask Mark Cohen all the time about this. So with some Jewish people I talk to, they don't live the culture, but they I guess serve the religion. They're part of the religion, but they don't live in that culture. Like they don't follow all the rules of it. Where some people say, no, being Jewish is a culture. It's not a religion. It's who we are. You know, so where does your girlfriend's family stand on it and her?
Well, they definitely identify as Jewish. She's Ashkenazi Jewish, but they don't, strictly observe all of the different ceremonies and traditions, right? So, but they definitely identify and talk about it, but they're not, they're not doing. I forget what the Friday worship, what their Friday tradition is. The Shabbat, I believe it's called. And then they have these other traditions that I don't think Michelle and her family honors.
So then how's that going to work out for you in the long run?
How so?
Because I hear like they really promote marrying other Jewish people. Now, are you going to convert?
We're not at that place yet. We haven't had that conversation. It's never been something that's brought up between Michelle and I, or even her parents, or even my parents.
How's that not brought up? Because it's such a big issue for that culture.
Well, there's what's an issue for the culture, and then there's what's an issue for the individual.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
And so I think, individually speaking, that may be something that might come up down the road. Who knows? I'm open to it. I'm willing to hear what that even looks. I know Sammy Davis Jr. Converted, and
Lenny
I know
Kravitz
there's a few other who converted. And I've always there are parts of the Jewish culture that I've always admired. So I used to substitute at Jewish schools also, and for some reason the Jewish schools always requested me. And they're taught to question everything, right? I grew up, I was baptized Methodist, and, black people, you do as you told.
Yeah.
Where in the Jewish community, they're taught to question even authority. Like you're taught that everyone is on the same level as you are, not that anyone is above you or below you. We're all the same. So you can ask, if you're a 5-year-old, you can ask a question to a 30-year-old, like your peers.
The same level,
right?
Yeah.
And so I like that idea, because I think that a lot of evil has been done because people have been afraid to question or speak up, because they've kind of had that taken out of them from a young age. And so I think that there's something about questioning authority that is effective to an extent. At some point, you do have to go along with the status quo, but then you need these people who are going to be rogue ants and say, hold on, this doesn't sound right. Why are we doing this? What's the meaning of all this? Just to keep everything balanced. So I really love that, and also love their sense of humor. I grew up on a lot of, I grew up on Sanford and Son.
Oh yeah,
my favorite show. And one of the cool things about that show is that there was a point where Sanford, I forget, Red Fox,
yep,
was bringing some black writers. He was like, I want some black writers, and then they brought in black writers, and then after an episode, he's like, bring back my Jewish writers, bring them back. And so we had, this was a show I grew up on. I remember being 9 years old, and my mom would send me to bed, and the show I think came on at maybe 9 or 10 o'clock, and my bedtime was 8, and I would stay up a little late, and I had a TV in my room, and I would plug in headphones so I can listen to it, and I couldn't really laugh out loud because I didn't want my mom to hear. But to look back and realize that was the show that made me laugh so hard throughout my childhood, and then to find out that the writers were all Jewish, and then to find out there's there's so many of them in Hollywood and in comedy. So I was just like, we are. And Seinfeld was one of my favorite comedians growing up. So I was like, we're aligned in terms of our humor. So
if you could have dinner with a comedian, living or dead, who would that be with?
Wow.
And just pick their brain.
Dick Gregory.
And why?
I have to go with Dick Gregory, because Dick Gregory embodied a lot of things that I'm aspiring to. One, he was outspoken about things that were going on in the world and with himself. He made the political personal and the personal political, and there's such an art to that without dividing the room and without losing people, that I found that I felt like he was able to do. The second part is, he was all about health and wellness as he saw it. He lived to be a great age. And so to come up as a stand-up comedian at the time that he did and to have the longevity and relevance up until the day that he died that he did, I love the fact that he didn't burn out. He wasn't a guy who was, doing a thing for 10 years and you never heard from him. He was constantly a part of the zeitgeist. And then the third part was if you listen to his albums today, it's still relevant. Mm-hmm. It still holds, even though they were, like I said, they had a political slant. He wrote books. His books were fascinating. I remember just sitting in Barnes and Noble and reading his books and really connecting with the material and feeling like that it made me excited to learn more, and that's how I grew up. My mom has only emphasized two things in our household was to learn and to earn. She's like, when you wake up every day, you're doing one, if not both of those two things, learning and earning. So I love that because it wasn't so much about, some parents are like, you're going to go to college or you're going to go to Stanford. And my mom was like, I don't care where you go as long as you're learning and earning. And so that really opens up a possibility of what you can do versus, having a narrow scope for your child and trying to box them into this one specific thing. I'm really grateful.
What would be the first question you ask him then?
You know what? I don't know if there would be a question that I would ask him. What question would I ask Dick Gregory? I'd probably ask him what got him out of bed this morning? Yeah. I'm always fascinated by that because, and I've shared this with you, I've struggled with depression for chronically for most of my life. And part of that I'm finding out was related to sleep apnea, because with sleep apnea, you're never getting deep REM sleep. And so you're kind of just walking around like a zombie. I remember just sleeping any opportunity I had. I played sports, but as soon as I got back home, I would just immediately crash. At any moment I could sleep, I would sleep. And I'm finding out more of that was related to my sleep issues. So I'm always fascinated by what gets people out of bed in the morning. Some people will say their kids, they'll say their wife, the garbage truck, a sciatica, I gotta pee. But I'm always fascinated by, because you don't have to get out of bed. You can stay in bed. It's so comfortable. So why get out? Why leave this comfort zone? What's getting you out of bed in the morning? And I'm fascinated by that question. And I love to hear how people respond to it. Is it internal or is it external?
Oh yeah, kids waking you up. That's what gets me out of bed. But no, I've always been early. I love getting out of bed.
I love getting out of bed.
And to watch
early.
My kids, like my son is like me. Literally, I can wake him up. He jumps up and go. My daughter takes her time like my wife. You cannot wake my wife up. Like she's a slow rise. You know what I mean? But my son, I'll be like, hey dude, we gotta go to school. Okay. And he's up. He's just like me. But my daughter, man, you're gonna have problems for a good 15, 20 minutes to get her up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting to see how they change too, right? Because the sleep patterns, I'm sure you've seen huge differences in the sleep patterns, and but that's cool that you and your son had the same sleep pattern, and then the wife and the daughter.
And that's what's so weird. My son looks like me, and my daughter, and it's like they took everything from both of us. If you could go back in comedy, just your stand-up career, or maybe just 3-4 years ago, would you have changed something and been better at it?
The first thing that comes to mind is I would have watched more film or listened to more of my sets. That's, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And I remember in college feeling like I would have been not a great player. I would have never been a great player, but I would have been a better player if I had come in and watched the film. And because it gives you a chance to improve your muscle memory, improve your response and reaction time on the field. You can see things a lot faster before they even happen when you study the game film, not only of the game you played, but the opponents you're about to play. And the coach would always emphasize that, and it was optional. And I remember looking back being like, man, I would have made that play had I watched the game film. And now as a comedian, I've gotten more lax at this point with listening to my sets, and I realized I'd be so much sharper, so much quicker if I would take that time to listen. But that's where journaling comes in. A lot of, that's why I started journaling, because when you're able to reflect on your day or your week or your year, my birthday's coming up March 18th, and you get to look at your year, then you start to catch patterns faster, things that are working for you and things that are working against you. And then you can kind of course correct a lot sooner before it spirals into some type of calamity or catastrophe. So yeah, I would definitely say, reviewing the footage.
You're the one that told me to audible that Will Smith book, which I thought was great. Mm-hmm. And before my special, I actually did the 20 minutes with the lights off and just watched my film of my special to know the beats. And I did it every day for about the week going in. And man, when I came out, it's so amazing once you focus in on something for 20 minutes and put it on repeat. Like I do my scripts like that. I do everything like that. And I absorb so much faster, because you can be in a room, but it's hard to turn off and just focus on one thing for 20 minutes. I mean, that's the challenge, especially with alerts going off, kids running in. It's really hard to zone out. And where I never, before all the social media and the phones, it was easier. Mm-hmm. It was still hard, but it was easier because you didn't have all these distractions. But I will say, when I zoned out for that week going in, I've never felt more confident. I remember the feeling of my first special, how nervous I was. And this one, it was just like, oh, I'm doing any other show. It was so comfortable. It was so, yeah. So it's a thing where, we grow and learn. And I never journal because I hate writing. I just hate writing.
Yeah, you're a talker. You're more verbal. So sometimes I'll do a talk to text for my journal.
Yeah.
I don't always write.
Okay.
Sometimes I do the talk to text, and I won't even read it. It's just the act of talking to text allows me to free up mental space or get some clarity on a thing. And then because a lot of times it won't even transcribe correctly.
Yeah.
So just hearing myself say it out loud, I'm like, oh, there it is. That's what I needed,
Got you. So now what you got coming up next? You on tour? You got a website? What's up, Leo Fly? Now, we didn't get into a lot of comedy this time because I like to keep these short, but I love that we talked about real stuff, and maybe you can come back and we can talk like just straight up comedy next time.
The biggest thing for me with this I life coach, and life coaching for me is exploding. Like I have probably tripled my clients
so you
right
got 3 now.
Right. and it's beautiful to take all these concepts and things that I've learned about life and health and wellness, and then to be able to share it with people and improve and impact lives like that. So right now it's I'm opening for Hassan Minhaj in San Diego.
Nice.
In April 20th. He'll be at the San Diego Civic Theater. So get your tickets to that.
How'd you get that gig?
Time.
Yeah?
Time. I've known Hassan from when we both started out in stand-up around the same time. And then I was actually personal training Hassan Minhaj for about a year. I personal trained him right up until he got The Daily Show and had to move to New York. I remember being he was like, I think this might be our last session because I think I'm about to get this Daily Show. And sure enough, and that's what happened. And then he came back to San Diego 6 months ago to workshop his new hour. And I reached out to him and asked if I could open, and he said absolutely. And then he's coming back again to officially do it, and he's gonna let me open. So that was beautiful. A 20-year relationship in the making, and so I think it's like a 4,000 seater. It would be the most people I've ever performed in front of. So I'm excited about that. And then going back to Alaska to do some shows too. So that'll be fun.
And that's the thing is, that's where I think I since I started comedy so late, I don't have those relationships because I didn't even live in LA. You know, that's the one thing I miss. Like, I didn't come up with anybody. I just kind of came up, you know, and now I'm finding friends on the way, you know, but 10 years from now, it'll be like that. But it's just right now, it's kind of like, you know, I know a lot of comedians, but I don't know a lot of comedians. Right. You know what I mean? Like, I know a lot of comedians, but I don't know their numbers, you know, and vice versa, you know. But if I hit them up, I feel like they would support me if I needed something. It's one of those things. So that's one thing. If I could go back, I would do two things. If I could go back and tell myself something 10 years ago or 5 years ago, it would be, first thing, start a podcast. And the biggest mistake I ever made was, I forgot the guy's name, but he owned a huge podcast company. He hosts The Wall. He's like a nerd radio guy. But anyway, he said, start a podcast. And I looked at it and go, I'm on real radio. I'm not going to say. This is how stupid I was. I'm on real radio. I ain't going to do no podcast. And he goes, I think it's going to be big. He's like, yeah, you do that little podcast thing, all right? This was like 10, 11 years ago. The second thing, I think there's 3 mistakes. Me and Joe Coy had a podcast that was doing like 200,000 downloads. It was so big at the time. We weren't even getting paid. We were just doing it for fun, right? And then we couldn't make it work, right? We could, because he would be on tour. Scheduling. We couldn't make it work. So then I was like, you know what? Forget it, man. It's tough. So if we would have kept it going, it could have been, I tell people, we were doing 200,000 downloads back then, 8, 9 years ago. It would have been massive. And the other thing I would have told myself is be aggressive in social media like 10 years when it first came out. But I'm trying, but it's still not my jam. You know what I mean?
You know what? I realize I'm not
that dude.
I'm just not going, I can't do it. It's not me. And it takes more away from me than it gives to me.
Yes.
And unless I can find somebody who can just do it for me, like completely and really build it, I can't
making one
on
video and go, you got to do it every day. Like, it's a job.
It's
like
a job.
To hear and Tony Baker and all those cats, man, Kevin said, they do it. Like, they got a studio.
They got a
Do
system.
it every,
yeah, they got everything.
They got people.
Yes.
You know, like, it's a job. It's a job. Well, Leo Flowers, thank you so much for popping by.
Thanks for having me, Michael. This is
man.
awesome.
Yeah, man. Oh, one last thing. Let's see if we got time. Tell me about your first time you performed in front of Esty or at the Cellar in New York.
The first time I performed in front of Esty, wow, it was at the Comedy and Magic Club in Hermosa, California. I remember Richard, who was the manager of the Comedy Magic Club.
Love Richard.
And he pulled me to the side and he's like, Esty's here. And I was like Comedy Cellar, like New York Esty? He was like, yeah, and she's looking for comics. And he was like, so do what you're gonna do based off that. And I remember, so
did you see her? Did you walk by?
I didn't see her because she didn't come backstage. She was in the audience and she didn't tell anybody she was there. So and what's great about, and I this is part of I think why we've bonded for so long is I remember you posting a clip of Gladiator from Gladiator on your social media, which is one of my favorite movies, because there's a scene in there right before he's about to go out into the arena. I think it was Russell Crowe.
Yep.
He goes, I'm going to kill this guy in like 3 seconds. And his manager goes, no. If you kill him too quickly, the crowd will boo.
Yes.
And then the king will have to kill you. And he goes, take your time, make it a spectacle. That way, when you kill him, the crowd will feel like, that they got their money's worth.
Yeah.
He goes, if the crowd loves you, then the king can't kill you.
Yes,
I remember
right,
that.
yes.
And so when
Esty was the king.
So Esty was the king, and I go, okay, I can't play to Esty. I got to play to the crowd. If the crowd loves me, she'll have to let me in.
Yeah.
And so I went out there, and you've heard my grapes bit.
Yeah.
I just did the grapes bit and crushed. And as soon as I got off stage, I'm like, man, there's one thing to crush, but you still don't know how they're going to receive it as the booker. And so Richard goes, I need you to come with me. And I go, dang, man, the way he said it, I was like, he was just walking me out the building.
So this is right when you got off stage?
This is right up when I got off stage. Okay. And Esty was at the end of the hallway. And I've heard things about it, and I'm terrified. I'm 6'1.5", but in my head she is like 12. And I walk up to her and she goes, hi, my name is Esty. I have this club in New York called the Comedy. She's very humble.
Yeah.
I have this club called the Comedy Cell, but we're opening one in Vegas. I don't know if I would like to invite you to please perform at that. She was and I was just like, my head was like, what? I want to be like, hell yeah! I want to pick her up and spin her around. Right. And I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. And I shook her hand and walked away. But man, I was clicking my heels, man. I was like a little schoolgirl, son. So. Thank you so much, Esty and Richard.
Yes, Richard got me in. Richard got me in too.
That club, man. There was a good that club for about 2 years probably helped me pay rent.
There you go.
So thank you, Comedy Magic Club in Hermosa, which is now stand-up comedy in
Richard runs the new spot.
Yeah, he runs a new stand-up comedy club, and I forget where it's located. Oh, man, it's in LA. It's a great room.
All right, Leo. Thanks for joining us, man.
Thank you, brother.
All right, make sure you subscribe, star it, leave a comment, all that stuff.
All that.
Do it. March 15th, my special I Never Thought drops. Make sure you check that out, too. All right? See ya.